All right, it's time for another exciting episode of Random Thoughts from Craig's Mind, the worst video channel on YouTube. And I'm back out here again in the backyard studio on an overcast day, so it looks like the lighting is pretty bad. But that's okay because nobody's going to watch this video anyway, so it doesn't matter what the lighting is. So today's video is about how I learned to stop worrying and learned to love the national debt. So when I was younger, I believed that we needed to control the debt, just like everybody else in the world believes that. And I can remember when I was a kid, I read that when I was the age that I am now, that every person in the United States would have to pay $84,000 a year to pay for the national debt. $84,000 in taxes is what we'd be paying today for the national debt. Well, guess what? I'm not paying $84,000 in taxes. So everything that people thought about the debt in the 1980s was absolutely 100% wrong. And everything that people think about the national debt today is also 100% wrong. And I'm going to tell you why. So, as I said when I was younger, I believed that we needed to control the national debt and all that kind of stuff. We need to raise taxes, we need to cut spending, and all this nonsense. But one of the things that I always recognized was that it didn't really matter what the national debt was, because ultimately nobody was going to do anything about it, right? Because who's going to pay the price if we default on the national debt? Well, it's going to be the bondholders, which are who? The wealthy, right? How are the wealthy going to decide, we really ought to do something about the debt? Why don't we just default on our own wealth? I mean, that's obviously not going to happen. And so I fully recognized that it didn't matter what the debt was. We were always going to honor the national debt no matter what it was. And it didn't matter who owned the debt or whatever, because obviously they were going to have an interest in being paid as well, because they were wealthy people. So then came the financial crisis, and that's when the whole system got exposed, and I recognized how the system actually worked, which was for the government to basically bail out the wealthy, right? So the debt is unlimited, because the government can go in and just cover all of the wealthy's losses, which is what they did. In the financial crisis, all the banks basically went to zero, all the wealthy lost all of their money, and the government just said, hey, let's just make some more money and it'll be right back where we started, right? They didn't decide to default on the debt at that point because it was unpayable. All they had to do was make more money, because who makes the debt? Who makes the money? The government. The government makes the money, the government makes the debt. And the debt, the sole purpose of debt, is to give rich people an ability to control society through their wealth, right? If you have to go to rich people for money, then they control you, and you have to do what they want you to do. So if you want to build a school, obviously the government could build schools for free, but what they want people to do is go to the wealthy and have the wealthy give them money, and then they get interest, and that allows them to support themselves and allows them to control society through that interest payment, through that control of money. And so ultimately all debt is a structuring of society for the wealthy. And this goes all the way back to the Roman Empire, which was based on debt, right? That's where we got all of our economic ideas and how you're supposed to run society. because their society was based on debt. And every king, every dictator, right, is supported by the wealthy, because the wealthy establish the government, the wealthy control society, and so all debt ever is a means for the wealthy to control society. So when the wealthy lose their money, they just make more money and bail themselves out, and then they try to get back control of the system by telling you that you need to pay more taxes, or we need to cut food stamps for black people, or we need to cut aid for brown people, or whatever it is that they want to use as an excuse. You'll never see them ever cut money for the wealthy. They never do that. They never cut the military budget. They never cut pharmaceutical revenue. They never do any of that, because that's where that money is supposed to go, right? That's the way we structure our society. Our society, the whole world, is based on debt, but debt is never real. Money is never real. Money is a human invention. Debt is a human invention. And so if you get into a problem with debt, then you just make more money and you fix the problem. And that's what we did. And we're doing it over and over again, and we're going to do it again, right? When we had the financial crisis and all money went to zero, we just created more money because we could. When we had the Iraq War, we couldn't even afford Social Security. Well, it turns out we could afford Social Security, and we could also afford the Iraq War. We could also afford Afghanistan, right? And now we can afford to support Ukraine with $15 billion or whatever it is we're sending over there for our war with Russia. So there's never any limited supply of money. And, if you think about it, human beings existed for tens of thousands of years with no money at all. So we know money is not real. If you ask an economist where money comes from, they'll tell you it comes from the ground, right? You dig it out of the ground with the gold standard. You can only have a certain amount of money or things go wrong. You start having Zimbabwe, or you start having the Weimar Republic. That's what they'll always bring up about having too much debt. Well, Germany was not a real country during the Weimar Republic. They were a defeated country. They were controlled by the Americans and the French and the English, and so they were basically a slave colony to those countries, and that's why they didn't have any money that was any good, because nobody thought that Germany was a real country anymore, right? And then Hitler came in, and guess what? All their problems went away. He just said, "The hell with all this. We're going to be a real country again." And guess what? Their bonds were good. Their money was good. Nobody cared. All of a sudden, Germany was fine, because Hitler was going to roll tanks on them, right? If you don't like Germany's way they're doing their financial business, we'll just roll tanks on you. So that solves your problem right there. So if you just recognize that all money is not real, that all debt is not real, that the U.S. government debt does not exist, then you'll start to really understand how the world works and what's really going to happen. And so, just like in my last video, I talked about why interest rates were going to be low for the rest of your life. And I talked about the reasons why, and this is the reason. Money's not real. Debt's not real. Interest rates are just a way of controlling society. The wealthy control society. The wealthy control society through interest rates. So if they want to knock some people out of employment to get control of, people's power, they'll just knock them out of jobs and people won't have as much power. If they get into a problem with the stock market going down, they'll just print some money and get themselves out of that problem. They'll fix that problem for themselves. They won't fix it for anybody else. The whole idea is for you to have problems. That's how the system works. You're supposed to have the problems. The wealthy aren't supposed to have any problems. Whenever the wealthy have problems, you just print money, fix the problem. Money's not real. Money is just power. Debt is just power. And so, as long as you have debt, you have power. The wealthy have power. Think about this. What people are really afraid of with inflation, the wealthy are really afraid of inflation because Inflation is caused by people having too much money, right? If everybody has money, then nobody has money because nobody has to go to work. And then how do you control people? You can't control people if they can just sit home and play games on their computer. You got to get them out there working. You got to get them out there needing to accept the power of the wealthy and to do what the wealthy want them to do, and to have a system where the wealthy have a stream of income. And that's what U.S. government debt is. It's a stream of income. It's a subsidy to the wealthy. That's all that it is. We don't have to go to China and say, China, will you give us some money? We want to build tanks so that we can have a war with you, right? We just build tanks. We don't worry about where the money comes from. The government makes the money. You don't have to ever have money. I mean, you just make it. Just like with the pandemic, right? We were out of money. Remember how we were out of money after the financial crisis? Nobody had any money. And then all of a sudden we had $1 trillion more. And then, if we go to war with China and Russia, we're going to have $1 trillion more after that, and we're going to get all of our, technology from the Chinese as we fight a war against them. But that's another story. So anyway, that's my summary of how I learned to stop worrying and love the debt. And that's all for this video. I can't even see myself in this picture, so this is probably going to be a really bad video. But all my videos are bad and nobody watches them, so it doesn't matter. So I'll probably just redo this video sometime in the future and do it better. But that's today's version. So thanks for not watching. Thanks for not subscribing. Thanks for not liking the video. And I won't see you in the next video, just like I didn't see you in the last video. So long, YouTube.